gentlemen, it's Jordan Kurtz with comments from the Peanut Gallery as well as the MMA Plug powered by Mile High Sports. Here recapping UFC on ESPN Plus 28, Lee versus Oliveira for you. To dig right into the thick of things with the main event, what an incredible performance from Bronx. Charles Oliveira is, like I said it in the preview, and he put the work out there for you all to see. He's one of the most underrated guys in the entire promotion. Charles Oliveira has been doing this in the UFC for a long time. He is now finally climbing up into that upper tier in terms of rankings. He was 13 coming into this fight against Kevin Lee, who I believe he was like 8, something along those lines. Comes in, finishes him, guillotine choke, but en route to that finish with the guillotine was, like I say, it was a masterful performance. He put on a clinic out there. He was going crazy with the leg lock transitions. I mean, he was switching up from heel hooks to just attacking the legs nonstop whenever Kevin was in somewhat of a dominant position on top. Oliveira continued to press the pace and push the action on him. That was, like I say, one of the best displays of his skill set throughout the entirety of his career. He also outboxed Kevin Lee, which I thought was incredible. I mean, there was times where he was just landing every single punch within the sequence of a combination. Oliveira was finding its mark. Kevin Lee came out after the fight and said it might be a couple of years before we see him back. Who knows if that's going to be the situation there for Kevin Lee. Hopefully he gets himself right mentally. This was his second fight after making the move up there to TriStar with Faraz. The first fight, obviously, he got the win, the head kick with Gregor Gillespie. But, like I say, Kevin Lee has a lot of skill. He's got a lot of time left on the clock. He's still a young man. We'll see how he bounces back from this. Oliveira, what's next for him? I know that he called out Khabib or Tony. That fight's obviously not going to happen, but I do foresee him getting a potential top 5 opponent, for sure top 10 again, and seeing him ranked very nicely within that top 10 once the new rankings come out. I wouldn't mind seeing him fight the loser of the Hooker and Poirier fight. I think that would be an interesting matchup, personally. Moving along to the co-main event, if we're taking a look at Gilbert Burns against Damian Maia, we saw a change into the guard there. Damian Maia is a legend of the sport, one of the greatest grapplers to ever compete. But Gilbert Burns is on pace to achieve that sort of status as his career goes along. He is constantly competing in all forms, whether it be mixed martial arts or strictly grappling competitions. And last night, wow, he sits Damian Maia down with a punch. Maia thought that he said that he was still there throughout all of it, but there's no denying that Gilbert Burns cracked him. He fell all the way back, and he did bounce his head off of the canvas, and then Gilbert Burns got on there, and then in the words of the great Michael Bisping, he went Donkey Kong on him and just started hammering away with probably 10-15 strikes that all were finding their mark while he was in that top position over the top of Maia before the stoppage was called. He called out Colby Covington. Whether or not he gets that matchup just based off of where they fall in the rankings, who knows? But I think that would be an incredible thing to see. I mean, you have two guys who have a very reputable and accolade-filled grappling background, and a couple of guys that have started to, showcase their skills on the feet and wanting to mix it up. Why not? I think that's an interesting matchup to see. The Johnny Walker hype train has been officially derailed. Johnny Walker was crowned to be the next best, the latest guy on the path to potentially dethroning John Jones as the 205 king, and he got put out against Johnny Walker, against Corey Anderson, and then in the fight last night, he was just dominated. He was overmatched. He looked outclassed. He was out-grappled by a guy who is not necessarily known for his grappling, who's more known for his, his striking in terms of his style. Just not someone who we all thought that he was before the injury happened. Once again, this may all be one of these stories of one of the biggest tragedies within mixed martial arts, but it was also a self-destructive measure when Johnny Walker decided to go ahead and do that worm that blew his shoulder, and he's never been the same. Talking about a couple of the other matchups, just real quick. Brandon Moreno against Formiga, that was an incredible matchup. You saw why the 125-pound division is something that deserves to be put out there, deserves to have the stars built and continue to be marketed out there for the fans to be able to digest and consume, because that was as entertaining as it gets, in my opinion. You see Brandon Moreno, especially after, let out that cry of emotion. Wow, that was moving. And to hear it echo the way that it did in that empty arena there in Brasilia, Brazil, I was a very big fan of that fight and of that matchup. For Brandon Moreno, he called out for the matchup with Mick Maynard right then and there to sign for the potential title shot. We'll see. We'll see as far as that goes. I think that he has moved himself up into that discussion, though, in that division. Won the LFA title just months ago, has moved up and has won and been successful in the UFC. He's making a strong case and has put himself out there as someone that the people can rally behind. Then, if we're moving on to the next fight, Amanda Ribas, she just looked absolutely dominant against Randa Marcos. Nothing much more that you could say there. She keeps the train rolling, and we might see a much bigger opponent with a higher level in terms of the ranking for Ribas there. And then to close off, to talk about the curtain puller, Veronica Macedo against Bielecki. That was very entertaining for the entirety of that 15 minutes. Macedo did get tired at one point and was a little bit sloppy, but you can't say that she didn't have heart and didn't just absolutely empty the cup and wring the towel out to give herself the best chance at winning there. Bielecki, she ends up winning the decision 29-28 on all three cards. She is very early and very green in terms of her MMA career. She does have a heralded and an accoladed Muay Thai background, so we'll see what happens when she has to go up against someone who can match her size for size, because Macedo was very much so the undersized fighter in this matchup. Bielecki showed that she has a very strong base and strong within her hips, wasn't able to be taken down, and in any of those exchanges was able just to pretty much plop herself right down on top and to establish that posture in the positioning. So we'll see what happens with her next in relation to the level of competition that she faces, or specifically as it relates to the grappling side of things. We'll see. A lot of the events in the next coming weeks are kind of in limbo, with the commissions and the states not necessarily having a venue to provide for the fights to go on. As a statement from Dana as of Sunday morning, that they're actually in search with even some of the native grounds where you don't have to abide by all of those state sanctioned rules, where they have their own governing bodies. We'll see what's coming up. We already know that Leon Edwards is out as far as the main event next weekend goes for what was supposed to be scheduled, the London fight. Hopefully we are still on for UFC 249, and we all still get to see Tony and Khabib. Closing out for the week, this is Jordan Kurtz with comments from the Peanut Gallery, as well as the MMA Plug powered by Mile High Sports. Thank you for following along. Please like, share, and subscribe.